Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Dentistry Unmasked. My name is David Rice here, as always, with
Hey everybody, Pam Maragliano-Muniz. David, how's your week going?
fantastic, it turns out. How about you?
Oh my gosh, it's been good, busy but good. But I feel like, there's sometimes you just get to stop and like spend time with people you really, really like, which every
Yeah.
podcast I do is like I share that sentiment every time I get to hang out with you. But today's extra special because back by popular demand, and I just adore him myself. We've got Jason Auerbach, Bloody Tooth guy, my niece and nephew's oral surgeon, like the guy. Jay, welcome.
How are you? Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for this, truly.
Me too, especially because I feel like what's the word for like a, a twofer and then there's the trifecta, whatever the two thing is, because we're here chatting with you on the podcast, but you recently wrote an article for Dental Economics. And so I appreciate you for doing that and taking the time to do that because you're so busy. But let's talk about that for a second because the article is about social media and being authentic. And I want to know because the algorithm is constantly changing, but you're like ahead of the curve. Like you're just doing all the things. So like how do you do that? And what's happening for you?
Um, First of all, thank you. And I would say thank you for the opportunity to allow me to contribute to dental economics. I mean, I really personally appreciate it very, very much. Uh, Listen, I think that as we've seen, there's so much going on in the social media space in general, specific to healthcare and across the board. And I don't know that I pay so much attention on the technical side to what the algorithms are or what I perceive they're going to be or anything like that. And frankly, maybe to my detriment. But I do think that what has worked for me, and I think what continues to work for me, and I hope it shows through, is kind of the authenticity, the realness, because there are a lot of social media accounts out there where people are very much focused on curating an image, and they're very much focused on kind of putting out there what they perceive people want, or almost like imitating others. But what you see is what you get. I have a very like my career trajectory has helped me kind of lay perspective into what I put out there. My training has allowed me to kind of instruct and give guidance to younger dentists, surgically minded, and also other specialists. And so it's real. Like what you're seeing is what you're getting. And so if that, like any kind of social environment, if people are going to respond to it, then more people are going to want to see it. If it turns people off, then you're not going to get anything from it. So I think that's kind of how I think about everything. Just stay true to who you are, and the right people will gravitate towards you, and the wrong people for you won't.
That's such a life lesson, isn't it? And as a younger version of me, for sure, I was guilty of like whether it's in a personal relationship or all those things, and you're working so hard at it as opposed to just being the best person you could be, happy doing the things you love to do, and realizing like, oh, it turns out there's a lot of people who like the same things, and
Right.
just, yeah, push
Yeah.
versus pull.
Well, I think it's challenging because let's be honest, I'd say most dentists are overachievers and you want to put your time and effort into something and see it succeed. And obviously there's many definitions for success, but people see, say, your Instagram and think, okay, well, I want to do that. How do I do that? And I feel like maybe they don't have the confidence to just be who they are because, and I think that there's some people that don't have a tough skin and maybe feel like, well, if I'm not everybody's cup of tea and if somebody puts a mean comment, what am I going to do? How am I going to do? I take the whole post down or whatever. I think that that could just spiral into a forget it. I'm not posting anything. And
Right.
so, how do you handle? I mean, I'm sure I don't really see them from on your page per se, but I'm sure there are, haters out there and people who write negative things. I mean, how do you handle that? And how do you just sort of brush it off and move on?
I think that comes with time. Ultimately, as you mature and as you evolve as a human being, you become more accepting of your weaknesses. You become more introspective. You become more aware of who you are as a human being, and some of the things that would have bothered you or even bothered me 5 years ago don't bother me anymore. And there are still plenty of things that bother me. Even like, those things shift, I think, because as you become more confident with your skill set and the things you bring to the table and the successes that you've had, you're able to really kind of just keep things in perspective. But it's still hard. I think ultimately, there are a lot of influencers of every kind out there who say like, yeah, don't let it bother you. But some of these things still do bother you, and that's okay. Actually, for me, as somebody who's dealing with, like larger scale healthcare business, and still practicing with patients with the goal of practicing for many years to come, there are really kind of day-to-day challenges that to me are much more difficult to deal with. Again, when you keep in perspective, like, these are real human beings that I'm dealing with. Everyone's a real human being, but I don't have any real relationship with them. They don't know me. They may think they know me, the people on social media, but like, my surgeons with whom I work, my team members, my referring dentists, my patients, though, my family and friends, of course, those are the relationships that really, like, they're at the core of who I am. And then if one of those people is disappointed, upset, or hurt, or whatever, that's kind of where I focus. So I guess it just comes with time and perspective, like anything else.
I appreciate a lot of what you just said. First of all, I think it's a rare human who isn't in some way, shape, or form impacted when somebody comes at them. And maybe we've learned to cope, or that becomes a skill set over time where you're just like, whatever, but it still stings. So if you're listening here, like, nobody's bulletproof. So that's one. I feel like that was a really cool thing you said. And the other side of it was, do you guys remember when you were a little kid and like people in your family said like, hey, if you walk away from this earth with like a half a dozen or a dozen like really great friends, like you did pretty well. And you're like, these people are crazy. There's hundreds of people out there. I, I don't know. The more now I'm starting to push 60 and I'm realizing like, man, if I walk off this earth with 12 people, I'm a damn happy camper.
Yeah. I mean, definitely the core of people that you keep around you
Yeah.
I don't know that it shrink. I know that, it shrinks in terms of the time that you spend, but you, of course,
Yeah.
as you get older, you have people who were with you when you were a child and in your growing years and from different parts of your life. And I'm very, very fortunate to call a lot of people good friends. I really am. I
Yeah.
know that maybe is like counter to what you were just saying, but I feel very fortunate. I have a lot of people around me who I love and who I perceive love me. And in that way, I'm very, very fortunate. But the real people, like those people who really know you, those few who you can open up to and be vulnerable with,
Mhm.
and really kind of like show your true colors, those are the special ones.
For sure.
Totally agree. No, and I think that I remember, I think probably the first and only post that ever really hurt my feelings was somebody called my cat fat. And then they went on and they asked me why I would let him get to be as fat as he is because he's just so fat. It was like this whole thing. And I was just like, I actually, I took the post down. This was years ago. And I just felt so bad. And I felt like, did I fail my cat? Like, yeah, he is fat, but like I don't know what happened. He just got fat. And it was this whole thing. So I feel like I get it. And I feel like that's my cat. But how do you feel when somebody's commenting on your work? Like I feel like that might even sting a little bit differently too. And I think that it just takes time. And I feel
Yeah.
like, oftentimes the people that do that are just like crabby and just have like a problem with themselves. And I feel like you just have to brush it off and move on.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. Yeah. Fortunately, there aren't that many people who will make negative comments about my work. And I think specific to oral surgery versus other specialties where they're looking at an aesthetic result or something like that, when they can actually critique, a line angle or or a curve or a hue or something like that. With surgery, it's maybe some sort of technical thing or questioning an instrument choice or something like that. And by and large, it's a younger dentist or an inexperienced dentist who has read something in a book, or who's in school and they've been instructed by someone they respect that this is something you shouldn't do or should do or whatever it is. And I actually take the moment to educate them. Sometimes when you could read the tone, it's something where I'm just like, whatever, dude. But the fact of the matter is by and large, it's an opportunity. Like I use a rear exhaust surgical air-driven handpiece to take my wisdom teeth out. That's how I was trained. And a lot of people think like I'm using a regular dental handpiece, so they ask about this soft tissue emphysema. Basically, if you blow air into an open wound, you can create emphysema in the tissue. And basically, they ask. I'm asked that, any day I post anything like that, and they're not wrong. They don't know what I'm using, so they're asking. And so for me, it's an opportunity to educate them and maybe change their kind of view on things. So that I don't mind when they're telling me, like, when they're calling into question like a judgment. Like I'm like, dude, you've done 3 of those in your career. That gets me a little bit.
It is
I don't know.
entertaining.
It is. And I'm a little fascinated by this handpiece because the last tooth I took out was on my cousin and it was about to fall out if he sneezed hard enough. So that's kind of the extent of surgery I've done.
All right.
And so, yeah, that's pretty cool. So that technology's been out there for a long time and people know that they should be using that?
So when you use a regular dental drill, first of all, the angle of the head and the length of the burr and the way that the air is pushed forward into the site is problematic for surgical procedures, period. And so just having the right instruments and armamentarium to do your surgery makes the surgery, of course, much easier. But if you have a handpiece that exhausts to the rear, so out of the patient's mouth, you're not blowing air into the surgical field. And so there's no risk, literally zero risk. Well, essentially zero risk to have for this emphysema issue. And so, yeah, it's been forever. I mean, I trained with those instruments. I finished training in 2003. Some people would use straight hand pieces. They used to be Hall drills that were driven by a gas, nitrogen. But now most guys are using like electric. If they're using straight hand pieces, they're using an electric motor. So yeah, everybody's trained differently. Not one thing is better than another. Not from my perspective. I love the way I treat my patients. I think my outcomes are great. The procedures go pretty quickly. So I don't see how I do things. It's just like how I do things. That's how I was trained,
So cool. So fascinating. I had no, David, you probably are rolling your eyes, but I had no idea. I think that's so cool.
No, listen, the last, I'm with you, Pam. Beyond, things flapping in the breeze, the last like real, I would say, surgical things I've done are on mission trips. And I'm literally channeling my inner BTG with like mantra being like, I'm going to elevate this thing so well that these students around me aren't going to think I have no idea what the hell I'm doing because I don't take teeth out all the time. But, you're on those trips, you're trying to help somebody. And, thank God for patience and technology and all the things.
No, it's true. Well, speaking of mission trips, you just got back from one. Why don't you tell us about yours? Because let me tell you, as a prosthodontist, I would never go on the mission trip like you're just describing, David, because if they were like, can you extract this tooth? I'd be like, no, I cannot. And so I would have to pick one where I could use my pros skills or restorative skills. I couldn't do surgeries, but you just came back from one from the Bahamas. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I just got back. So the Glow Good Foundation is a project that was started by a prosthodontist named Jonathan Levine, who practices in Manhattan. His patient Lenny Kravitz, who has some residence down in Eleuthera, which is in the Bahamas, and he about 10 years ago decided that there was a need, which there clearly is down there, for good quality dentistry and healthcare. But the beauty of dentistry is this is become part of, I mean, people know this, but this is an important thing to understand. Dentistry, there's a problem, you fix it, you get an immediate result, immediate satisfaction, both for the patient and for the delivery, whoever's delivering the care. Medicine is a much more long-term kind of focus. You need to basically be there, treat these patients who have, diabetes, hypertension, typical things that come with maybe a different type of diet or whatever it is. So dentistry is beautiful because it helps people in the immediacy, plus the education piece. So they started this thing about 10 years ago. It's made up of excellent clinicians and support team members who do all kinds of dentistry, not just surgery. Of course, surgery is part of it, but education in the schools down there. So now we hopefully will kind of eradicate the need for our mission trips in the future, because the younger kids are understanding what needs to be done from a prevention standpoint and early care and maintenance and things like that. But it's not just surgery, it's hygiene. Endodontists go, prosthodontists go. We're removing teeth. We are doing intraoral, basically digital impressions, and building 3D dentures and milling crowns and things like that right there. The quality of the actual clinicians, the quality of the technology is truly second to none. So you have like-minded professionals who are going down there because we are so fortunate to do what we do day to day, who want to give back. You have a patient population that is so much need and so much desire and so much appreciation, and so much gratitude for the things that we're doing, that it's kind of like a match made in heaven. And the group of people that go are really excellent people. Like, we all kind of get together at the end of a long day of working really hard. We talk about kind of how we want to advance this process going forward. We talk about how to expand the scope of the organization. We talk about how to expand not only locally, but to other areas where there is need, both nationally and internationally. And then there's opportunity for networking and self-development and just camaraderie and fun. And it's for me, just to talk a little bit, like, for me, it's a pretty special thing because I want to go, I want to help. I'm very fortunate, and I want to be able to give back. I have a skill set, and I've been blessed with so many things based on that skill set. So I do that, but I'm also a little bit bougie. Like, I don't necessarily want to go somewhere where, I mean, there's need all over them. But this may not project well. I'm sorry, but this is who I am. So, like, there's need all over the world, but I'd like to go somewhere where I can, like, do it in an environment where I'm taking care of the people who need help, but also I don't need to get 100 shots to go there and all of that. So I'm just being real. It's probably not the right thing to say, but I'm saying it. So, like, I go there, I'm safe, I'm able to take care of good people, I'm able to interact with good people. It's the right circumstance personally for me, and it's appreciated by so many. So that's kind of how I go about it.
I think that's awesome. Now, okay, I feel like what you just said, I know you said it might not be, interpreted the way it should be, but here's the thing. I feel like we do have a gift, and we are blessed to be able to perform these skills. And we also get to do them to the maximum of our abilities within our own practices. And so one thing I've also struggled with mission trips is sometimes you're going to do the best that you can given the circumstances you're working in. And I know I went on a mission trip last year. I went to the Philippines, and and I was doing kind of scoop and fill with glass ionomer. And the first day we just didn't have a great system. And so the material was setting, and, like, I left feeling like, I mean, I guess they're better off than they were, maybe, but I didn't do a great job. And so the next day, we were kind of playing with different ideas, and we decided to refrigerate the glass ionomer so that the setting time was more reasonable. But I feel like just because they're in a place that has need, it would be great if we could perform the care at the level that we know that we can, because, better than nothing is, I guess, better, but to your ability is the best. And I feel like that's sort of how I would want to perform in a mission trip as well.
Yes, this mission trip is all about that. Again, the technology, the people that have donated time, money, and materials, technology are exceptional. Henry Schein Cares is very, very involved in this. I personally was blown away. They had a tech there the entire time. So anything that went down, and things go down from time to time, especially when they're like high volume, it was there, and he was helping. He was fixing. A team of people that had been involved in the Glow Good Foundation since the beginning were there helping and moving people along and doing the right thing. There is, to some degree, a compromise in care just based on capacity, but again, the technology, I mean, sprint ray printers and I mean, anything that you need was there for us to use. The instruments that I was using, I mean, little plug, I was using my Bloody Tooth Guy instruments from TBS Dental. We were all using them for the surgery. They're exceptional instruments. So it's not like you're using, like, you got to find like a straight head screwdriver to take a tooth out that's in the side. I mean, everything is being appropriately sterilized and properly bagged and moved through the process appropriately. And there's a whole slew of people who are just as dedicated as the doctors to treating the patients, who support us down there, both from the island and also, you know, from up here in Dr. Levine's office. We're very, very fortunate to be able to have this support that we do, so that we can provide the care that we do, because really those people are getting them. I mean, I take out, you know, X number of teeth, and a patient is having a 3D printed partial denture or a 3D printed full denture that day. And we're talking about CBCT, which is definitely in the works for either this next trip, which is happening in April, or December. And then, you know, doing maybe some full arch, you know, maybe some locator based full denture, you know, for patients who are compromised bone. So there's definitely the mindset that from where it came 10 years ago with like lawn chairs set up essentially, to a full freestanding clinic right now that has autoclaves, and like it's a full dental clinic down there. And ultimately where it's going to go. And I think there's an opportunity to do, you know, children under some form of sedation. I've already spoken to one of my dental anesthesiologist friends, see if he wants to come down and help us next time, and just provide like a full scope of care for patients that need that. They need what we all need, and probably more than what we all need. We're doing it the right way. I mean, we're doing it the right way. I'm confident about that.
That's incredible. So let's talk a little bit about Max and what's happening there. So you've been building multiple practices. You're in charge of a larger organization. And how's that going? And what's on the horizon for you?
That's great. So we started Max. The concept of Max was basically based on the concept of Riverside Oral Surgery. So Riverside was my practice. We built 10 or 11 locations in northern and central New Jersey, and then we went out to find private equity that would essentially kind of let us do our thing, right? So we wrote into the organization, into the structure, into the charter, that all delivery of care would be controlled by doctors going forward forever. A clinical advisory board that was independent and autonomous in terms of all things delivery of care. And we were able to really kind of tell our story that resonated with oral maxillofacial surgeons. It's a pure oral maxillofacial surgery platform. As anyone who's ever listened to me knows, I believe oral maxillofacial surgery is the best specialty in all of healthcare. As I've said, I feel very fortunate to do it. I love it. I still practice over 3 days a week and plan to continue to do that forever, you know, as long as I can. So we are now in 5 states. We are in Connecticut, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and Vermont. And so we are totally Northeast focused. That is our only focus. And we're looking to really support doctors and practices that are at the forefront of wherever they provide care. Full scope, meaning everything from every subspecialty within oral surgery, you know, facial cosmetics, microvascular surgery, cleft and craniofacial, TMJ, and of course dental alveolar, implants, bone grafting, pathology, whatever it is, trauma. And we are really focused on doing right by us oral surgeons, by our specialty, protecting our interests. We've all seen what happens sometimes to corporate entities that are controlling healthcare of any kind. And over my dead body, will that happen to my organization? It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for my doctors. It doesn't work for my referring doctors, and it doesn't work for my patients. So, as you grow, there are always, I don't say obstacles, but there are always little bumps in the road that you have to endure, and you have to figure out a way over or around. And I think we are doing an exceptional job of it. And again, our story is resonating with those surgeons who are interested in joining a group that is different. And it's been kind of my mantra for everything. I've never done anything the same way it had been done before. We learn from each other, of course, we collaborate, but we're kind of like forging our own path with Max.
That's amazing. So obviously there are other groups out there who don't share the values that you have, in the OMFS space as well. How do people find Max? Like how do they learn about you in those states that you're in, that before they jump onto something? Because I think a lot of times dentists are, the first person who picks up the phone and calls them up and says, "Oh, we got the, sunshine, rainbows, unicorns, and pots of gold." And they're like, "Oh, great. That's for me." So how do we get them with you so they at least understand what's out there for them?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. First of all, that is really incumbent upon us to have our brand, to develop a brand, and to develop something that people know and trust, right? So to become the de facto expert in X, Y, or Z, fortunately, I have a little bit of a stage, and I honestly use it, and I appreciate it. And that's part of it. We have a co-CEO in Mark Sensoprano, who came from Guardian Dental Partners, who anyone who's ever ever worked with him would say the same thing about him. He's an honest, smart, accomplished, decent human being, brilliant, really smart dude. And so the two of us, and plus, my team of surgeons who are in leadership roles, and our existing leaders, our COO, our CFO, and all of our departments, we're building an exceptional team. So we're out there kind of spreading the word. And as the momentum builds and as more and more people hear about it, I mean, oral maxillofacial surgery is such a small, there are maybe 7,500 of us in the entire country. So it's a small world. Most of us know other people, and like anything else, the word gets out. It's, as long as we keep doing right by people, more and more people will spread the word on our behalf. It's something that I really truly believe. I mean, I'm all about marketing. I'm totally supportive of it. I believe in it completely. It works. But the kind of the beauty of it for me when I'm sitting in a business development dinner, talking to a potential partner or whatever it is I literally can say, call any doctor who's ever done any business with me ever. Whether it's, a doctor that's currently affiliated with Max, or someone I worked for earlier, or even the only one associate who's ever left Riverside Oral Surgery, a guy named Justin Messina, who during the pandemic moved to San Diego. Can't compete with Southern California, from New Jersey. Respect to New Jersey. Love it here. But the fact of the matter is that, I think, you have to build a strong reputation. Your reputation is everything. It takes years to build, but it could be taken away like that. So my whole thing is, protect that reputation by always doing the right thing. I speak about that in the article, in Dental Economics. If you always do the right thing, I have a very good friend, Jeff Schiffman, who's not in dentistry at all, who says, if you have to ask the question, you already know the answer, right? So you're like, should I do this? Should I do that? You always know the right thing to do. Just do that. Everything else takes care of itself.
That is so great. And I feel like we covered a lot of ground in a short period of time. And, to be honest with you, Jason, one of the things I admire most about you is that a lot of people you would think that are doing all the things that you're doing are, would kind of keep it close to their chest. And you're like, nope, it's about being yourself, having a message, doing good, whether it's, via philanthropy like you just did in the Bahamas, or, maintaining the quality among the practices that you have. And so I just feel like you have done a lot and you've done it all well. And I love that there's still that authenticity woven in among all of the things that you do. And so I'm really grateful for your time today.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. It really does. I appreciate your time and your, the opportunity to be here and to be involved in dental economics in the way that you've allowed me to be. And I appreciate you both very much. And if you want to go for the trifecta sometime, I'm happy to do it. I'd love to.
Absolutely. No, I would absolutely
Definitely.
love that. And you guys, if you're not following Bloody Tooth Guy, you're legit missing out for stars. Everybody else is. So this is like a bandwagon you need to get onto. So follow Bloody Tooth Guy. That's where you're going to find him. It's where you're going to continue to learn from him and also learn about new surgical instruments that people like me know nothing about.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Remember how you got there, friends. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week. Thank you, everyone, for watching or listening to the show this week. And thanks to our guests and sponsors on this episode.
Please check out our social media at Dr. Pamela_Maragliano and at Dental Economics Official.
Or you can check me out at igniteDDS or at Dr. David Rice.
And go to dentaleconomics.com to receive dental economics. You can choose to receive DE in print or digitally, and you can also get the details of our Principles of Practice Management conference on our website.
If you have topics or guests or anything you'd like to talk about on the show, send us an email to dentistryunmaskpodcast@gmail.com, and we will do our very best to make it happen. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.